So now we are into the second Sunday of 2021. 10 days already into the new year. We have left that dreadful year 2020 behind us for good, which is good. I know we can't guarantee that new year 2021 will be much different, better than last year. I hope and pray. Looking back, without a doubt, the year 2020 has been bad and tragic in many ways. However, alongside the sadness and tragedy, there has been quite a bit of good stuff, quite a bit of progress made during pandemic chaos of 2020. You see, the year 2020 has brought more scientific progress than any year in recent memory. For example, there has been a massive advancement in vaccine technology that helped speed up the production of COVID-19 vaccines and the success of their efficacy rate. And this progress will help other vaccine productions like the malaria vaccine progress, which is in the final stages of testing. In the other biomedical field, the genome editing techniques and CRISPR are on the verge of eliminating sickle cell anemia and possibly preventing cancers soon. Now that's huge. There has been a considerable advancement, on the other hand, in artificial intelligence and quantum computing technology and self-driving techniques last year as well. I read that Walmart will be using self-driving trucks for their distribution this year. And Tesla and other EV makers are coming out with self-driving vehicles more and more. We are already into the future, folks. There has been a dramatic shift from fossil fuel energy to renewable energy to green energy. It's happening quite fast. That shift has been fast-forwarded at least 5 years ahead of time, broadly around the globe, partly due to pandemic lockdown. And China, the polluter of the past, is fast becoming one of the forefronts in green energy revolution with solar and wind and electric power grid system in place. That's incredible, incredible. I can go on and on with the progress we have made in 2020. It's been a stormy and tragic year for many people around the world in 2020. However, there's been incredible progress and good stuff happen that will be a huge benefit to humanity in the long run as well. Now, I know that hindsight is 2020, that it's easier to analyze and evaluate situations when we are looking back on them in the past than when we are in the present moment. I know it's hard to celebrate the progress we made in the year 2020 in light of all the hardship people have gone through. But we need to remind ourselves that there is always a silver lining in every dark cloud. Often, creation emerges out of chaos. Now, in today's text from Genesis chapter 1, it says, "In the beginning, when God created the universe, there was nothing but dark chaos. The darkness covered the face of the deep, and God's Spirit hovered over the surface of the deep, dark waters. And God said, 'Let there be light,' and there was light." Creation emerged out of chaos. Out of deep, dark, primordial, chaotic waters, the creation emerged. This ancient primordial water in the beginning was the birthplace of the universe. This stormy, chaotic water has the power to both create or destroy. Life emerged out of the water in the beginning, but got destroyed through the flood water, 40 days and 40 nights. Remember, folks, that Noah's flood? But out of the flood, God begins a new generation of the human beings. This primordial water symbolizes God's presence and God's power, that God's power to create and the power to destroy. God is sort of wading in the deep, dark water in the beginning to create universe. And that God is wading in our own waters to create something wonderful and beautiful. So as people of God, we are reminded to see our every dark water, every chaotic and painful situation as a moment and place of God's creative presence. That God is powerfully stirring up something new and beautiful and wonderful in our struggles, in our chaos. That God is wading in our own stormy and chaotic water, hovering and brewing something beautiful and tasty. And sort of, God is like a brewery master, hovering over the brewing process to make the best craft beer. Now, does anyone know how the craft beers are made? The brewing process? Well, let me tell you. The process of brewing all begins with a crushing whole grain malt with a mill. It's called the milling process. Once the milling is complete, mashing begins, mixing the crushed malt with a very hot water, and then this malted grain goes through germination stage where it creates enzymes. And these enzymes get converted into sugar and beer flavor. And this malted water, so-called wort, W-O-R-T, it then pasteurizes and they add some hops for flavor, like a ginger and molasses. And longer it stays boiled, the bitter it tastes. So this wort then goes through a fermentation process where its sugar turns to alcohol, and then after the fermentation, it is poured into kegs or barrels for distribution. See, there are 5 different stages in the beer brewing process. And did you know that the beer is widely considered the most complex fermented beverage in the world? Its flavor, its color, its mouthfeel, and strength can vary more than any other craft beverage drink. You didn't know that, did you? I didn't know that. Now, God is like a local brewery master, milling and mashing, germinating, fermenting and kegging, hovering and brewing that thick malt water or wort. And out of that fermented water or wort, the best craft Indian Pale Ale is created. Sort of. In the beginning, God's Spirit hovered over the surface of the dark, chaotic world. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. Creation emerged out of chaos. God is always creating something new and exciting out of our chaos. So how do we see our stormy, dark world or water of 2020? Do you see that God is hovering over your personal stormy and dark waters and about to create something new and wonderful? Do you see any silver lining in the year 2020? So, what were some of your silver linings in the year 2020? Well, let me give you a few silver linings that I could think of. Maybe just begin with just one. You see, until this pandemic chaos last year, we like to live close together, right? So we have mega cities around the world with an overpopulation, and this urbanization has brought so many people living too close together, and this pollution happened, and climate change happened, which was not really good at all. But now we find people are moving away from the populated urban city and inner city cores. More and more people are moving into rural and remote areas to live. Since many of them can work remotely, they buy acres of lands out into the country and building their houses out there. All these were great silver lining during last year. And we need to spread people wide into the country, populate the rural areas. I mean, that's a silver lining, right? But then, guess what? The price of bare land has gone up like crazy, which is good news for many country dwellers, but bad news for people like me who dreamed of retiring into rural areas later. It's now so expensive to buy any rural lands, acres out there. I was going to retire to a remote acreage, like a country area, so I've been watching all the empty lands. Now all of the ones I have been looking at all sold. If I really wanted to move and retire to acreage, the only place left would be like Dawson Creek or Fort St. John, and who wants to move out there? That I can afford there, but who wants to move out? I'm not sure if I and my wife want to move there at all. So I guess I just have to settle here in Vancouver. This will be my retirement place now. Now that's silver lining for Sue. Well, not for me. So what were some of the silver linings in our church in Knox in the year 2020? Well, let me just list just 3 things. I know there must be many, but let me just count 3 silver linings for Knox last year. I think all of Knox people, your faith has grew a lot. You have been very faithful. Not that you weren't before, but you have really increased your faith. Now, I don't usually equate your faith with your donation, but you did put your money where you said it really mattered. You have supported Knox with your finance, and I can't tell you how much it means to our ministry, our vision, and our mission, and for me as a minister as well. It's a silver lining. Thank you very much. Our staff and volunteers have stepped up to the plate, to the challenge last year. I'm really grateful to work with such dedicated and faithful staff and volunteers here at Knox. They have more than stepped up to the plate, even with stress and all. So dedicated, and I'm so grateful to work with them. And thirdly, our online ministry has grown in many folds last year and continuing to do so. We have pivoted our ministry so quickly, so well to the crisis. And our virtual ministry, the website, all these related areas have grown quite a bit. Now you will all read that through our annual report within the next few months. The phenomenal growth and expansion of our virtual ministry last year. Silver lining. Some good stuff emerged out of the deep, dark pandemic waters of 2020 here at Knox. Sometimes it's hard to see anything good when we find ourselves being swallowed up by a deep, dark waters. Hard to become when we feel like we are being submerged into a deep, dark water. But we need to remind ourselves that God is powerfully present in our struggles. Now, in our text from Mark today, we read that John baptizing Jesus. And when Jesus came out of the water, there was a voice from heaven. And it says, "This is my son." Jesus just emerged out of the water and he began his ministry. Out of that deep, dark water, Jesus emerged and began his ministry to save the world. In a way, we have all been submerged, swallowed up in the pandemic waters of 2020. And we are about to emerge out of that water. In a way, we have all been baptized with the waters of 2020. And God's been waiting in that water. And now we are emerging out of that water into the year 2021 to serve God and to serve the world in the name of Jesus Christ.